I never planned to stay at my boss's house. It started with a flood. My apartment soaked overnight, the ceiling collapsed like wet paper. My landlord shrugged it off and handed me a motel voucher that smelled like mildew and cheap soap. Showed up to work exhausted, trying not to let the discomfort show, but Elian noticed. He always noticed. Elian wasn't just my boss. He was thoughtful in a way that felt effortless. Someone who remembered how you liked your coffee and the name of your cat, even if you'd only mentioned it once. Sharp jaw, calm voice, always dressed like he had somewhere important to be, even when he didn't. When he offered his guest room, I hesitated, but only for a second. "You shouldn't have to sleep in a motel," he said, handing me a spare key across the office coffee station. "It's just for a few days. My brother's there, but he mostly keeps to himself." That was the first time I heard Micah's name, just a footnote in Elian's offer, a shadow behind the hospitality. The house was more like an architectural dream, wide glass windows, polished wood floors, and silence so deep it rang in my ears. Elian had already flown out for a business trip by the time I arrived. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside, suitcase in hand, unsure if I should call out or just wait. Micah appeared a minute later at the top of the stairs, barefoot, tousled hair, black t-shirt hanging loose over narrow shoulders. He looked like he'd been pulled from sleep or a painting, eyes dark, mouth a little too knowing. "You must be Ray," he said, voice like warm syrup. "Elian said you were the quiet type." I gave a polite smile, unsure what to say. There was something in his gaze, curiosity mixed with something harder to name. Micah was polite, even friendly at first. He showed me to the guest room, asked if I needed anything, joked that Elian never let him have friends over when he was a teenager. I laughed, a little uneasy. He studied me closely when I did. Later, while I unpacked, I heard music drifting from somewhere down the hall, low, slow jazz. I found Micah in the living room, lounging on the couch, a book open but unread in his lap. He looked up. "You always keep your guard up like that?" he asked. I paused. "Like what?" He tilted his head. "Like you think someone might be watching." I didn't answer, just excused myself and returned to my room, shutting the door a little more firmly than before. That night I woke to the soft creak of floorboards just outside my room. I waited, heart thudding. Silence. The next morning, Micah made coffee. "You talk in your sleep," he said, without looking at me. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. But I knew, even then, that I wasn't just a guest in Elian's home. I was a piece in something already in motion, and Micah was watching. Micah had a way of folding himself into a room without making a sound. I'd walk into the kitchen, and he'd already be there, leaning against the counter, sipping black coffee, like he'd been waiting but didn't want to admit it. He wasn't nosy, not in the obvious sense. He never asked direct questions. Instead, he made observations. "You always stir your coffee counterclockwise," he said one morning. "People who do that usually carry grief." I laughed it off, but something about the way he said it stayed with me, like he was reaching into a drawer I hadn't opened in years. By the end of the first week, a rhythm had settled between us. We never made plans, but we kept ending up in the same places at the same time. Late-night takeout in the living room, quiet music drifting between our conversations, the occasional clink of glasses when he offered me a drink with that lazy half-smile. He listened, closely, more than anyone I'd ever met. Sometimes it felt like Micah remembered things I hadn't said out loud. "You hide," he said one night, out of nowhere. "In your voice, in your clothes, even in your silences. Why?" I wanted to deny it, but I couldn't. I just shrugged, unsure what truth he was pulling from me. "Elian hides too," he added, "but not like you. He hides behind purpose. You hide behind not wanting to be seen." It was hard to look at him after that. I started noticing things, how Micah never really slept, how he seemed to appear just as I was letting my guard down. There was a moment, brief but electric, when his hand brushed mine while passing a bowl of popcorn. Neither of us moved. His thumb rested just slightly against my palm. Then he looked up. "I've never had anyone stay this long," he said, quietly. "It's weird, but not bad." That night, he stood in my doorway before bed. The light from the hallway cut across his face, making his eyes unreadable. "I like your laugh," he said. "You laugh like you don't think anyone's listening." "I didn't know you were." "I always am." He stepped forward, just enough for my breath to catch. Then he kissed me. It wasn't forceful. It wasn't rushed. Just a slow, cautious question dressed as a kiss. I didn't pull away. Not immediately. But the guilt hit fast, unwelcome and sharp. I stepped back, heart pounding. "I can't," I said. Elian doesn't care," he interrupted. "He's not who you think he is." There was something venomous beneath his tone. Not anger, exactly. Something older. Resentment. History. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about Elian, about that kiss, about how easily I'd let Micah in. Micah was gentle with his words, but his presence was invasive. I couldn't tell if I was falling into something real or just being drawn into something already broken, and I had no idea where the edge was or who I was about to cut. Elian came home 3 days earlier than planned. I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door open, his suitcase wheels humming against the floor, the familiar weight of his footsteps. My heart caught in my throat. Micah looked up from where he sat at the dining table, expression unreadable. "Elian," I called, trying to sound casual. "Didn't expect you back so soon." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Meeting got canceled. Thought I'd come home before Micah." "Repainted the place in shadows." Micah chuckled, low and dry. "Missed you too, big brother." The room shifted after that. Every word between them carried an undertone I hadn't noticed before. Micah became quieter, but not less present, like a cat perched just out of reach, claws retracted but ready. Elian, meanwhile, watched. He watched me with a kind of caution that hadn't been there before. Polite, reserved, like he was trying to measure the silence between us. I felt transparent and guilty all at once. That evening, as I washed dishes, Micah leaned beside me, eyes flickering toward the hallway where Elian had disappeared. "You going to tell him?" he asked, voice low. "I don't know what there is to tell." Micah smiled, almost sadly. "That's the worst part, isn't it? Not knowing if it mattered." Later that night, I passed by the study and froze. Micah's voice filtered through the cracked door, sharp, amused. "I told you he'd fall for it. You owe me dinner." My stomach sank. I didn't wait to hear the rest. I backed away, pulse racing, every whispered word replaying in my head. I didn't sleep. Just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my own naivety. The next morning, I asked Elian if we could talk. We sat on the back patio, the air heavy with the scent of damp wood and something unspoken. "I should have told you earlier," I said. "Micah and something happened. But it wasn't what I thought it was." Elian nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the horizon. "He does that. Finds people I care about. Wears them down until they forget who they were before him." I blinked. "This has happened before. Since we were kids," he said, voice calm but tired. "Micah doesn't hate me. He just can't stand the idea that I might be happy when he isn't." I opened my mouth, then closed it. There was nothing. I could say that wouldn't sound small. "I didn't mean to hurt you," I whispered. Elian looked at me for a long time. "I know. You weren't the one trying to." The guilt settled deep, thick as smoke. I packed that afternoon. Micah didn't say goodbye. He just watched from the top of the stairs, arms folded, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. As I closed the car door, Elian met my eyes. No anger there, just a quiet sadness that made my chest ache. Whatever had begun between us had ended before it had the chance to become real. But some endings don't close chapters. They open new questions. Weeks passed, but the silence between us remained untouched. Elian didn't call. I didn't text. Whatever had existed before, warm glances across desks, shared jokes in the break room, was now a quiet ache we both carried, too proud or too wounded to address. I told myself it was for the best, that the distance gave us dignity. But the truth was simpler. I missed him. Micah's voice still echoed in my thoughts, smooth and disarming. I wondered if he'd meant anything he said, or if I'd just been a pawn in his private war. I kept remembering the way he looked at me after that kiss. Not lustful, not even possessive. Just satisfied. As if he'd completed a task. I began to piece things together. One evening, I stopped by Elian's office after hours. I needed closure, something solid to replace the doubt swirling inside me. He looked up when I entered, surprised but not unkind. Didn't expect to see you. I needed to know, I said. About him, about us. Elian leaned back, folding his hands. Micah's brilliant, but fractured. He knows how to mirror people. He becomes what you need, just long enough to undo you. Why doesn't he stop? Elian hesitated. Because pain is the only thing that makes him feel real, and making others feel it gives him control. I swallowed. He said you owed him, that you took something. I did, Elian admitted. Our father left everything to me, the house, the company, the future. Micah got resentment and half a childhood. It all made sense now, the hunger behind Micah's charm, the cruelty woven into his softness. He didn't want love. He wanted to dismantle it. I think he wanted to destroy us, I said quietly. Elian nodded. And he did, didn't he? We sat in silence, but it wasn't the same silence from before. This one had room in it, honesty, a cracked window instead of a closed door. I don't hate you, I said, barely louder than a whisper. His gaze met mine. I never hated you. I smiled, small and tired. Do you think we could try again? Elian considered that. Then, slowly, he shook his head. Not now. Not while the wound is still open. But maybe later, when we're both not looking back so much. It hurt. But it made sense. I left his office lighter than I'd arrived. Not because I got what I wanted, but because I knew where I stood. Micah never reached out. I didn't expect him to. He existed like a storm you brace for, survive and never forget. Some people pass through your life like fire, warming you, then burning everything you never meant to give them. But Elian, he stayed, at the edges, quietly healing in his own time. Sometimes we run into each other at the cafe down the street. The conversation is gentle, easy, no promises, just presence. And maybe that's all I need now. Not grand gestures. Just the quiet knowing that not all love is a lie, only the kind that starts in someone else's shadow.